Sadly, most of the information when it comes to how the average American family is dealing with their personal finances and planning for their financial future and retirement is not going to get them closer to where they want to be. So, one of the things that I did with Cashflow Hacking is I took a step back and I started thinking about, well, how are the most successful people in the world achieving success? And who better to look for success than people who are running companies? And I've always used the phrase, you need to run your personal finances like a business. And at the end of the day, I honestly didn't even realize what that even meant to myself. And I understand about running a P&L and doing all these things. But then I ran into something the other day talking about corporate finance. And then I looked over what people are doing successfully to be successful in the world of corporate finance. And then I basically built a bridge of understanding and kind of like I had this epiphany about how it correlated to the personal finance space and realized why people had it so wrong and why cash flow hacking is so in alignment with these principles to help you be successful. So that's what we're going to cover in this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. That way you're notified every time I launch a new video. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180, and we are going over personal finance, what to do with your money, thinking about it in terms of running your personal life, running your personal finances the way that you would run business finances. And now, in the past, I've done videos on this talking about running a personal P&L, having basically like a monthly budget and doing it in correlation to the same way that you would run a business. But I'm going even deeper right now, talking about the principles. I had a conversation with Garrett Gunderson the other day. We were talking about this idea of learning the principles of corporate finance and actually applying those principles, those corporate finance principles in your personal life. And so I started doing a little bit of a deeper dive on what that meant. And I found this image, and I ended up basically creating an image. I found this, paper, and I ended up creating this image that I thought was really in alignment with what I was talking about and talking about principles. So there are basically 4 different stages that we have for corporate finance. And so it starts off capital budgeting, capital structure, dividend distribution, and working capital requirements. So these are all 4 things that you need to consider when structuring a business finance. Now, like I said, I've talked a lot about, having a budget, having running your household the same way you would run a business, but we haven't really gotten into how that is specifically implemented in different phases and different components of financial structure, because I love talking about financial structure. And I think a lot of times people look at me and they hear me talk about this, and it just kind of is a phrase that doesn't make much sense. And I do this thing on the Life 180 pyramid where I talk about how to structure your life with safe money as the foundation and so on and so forth. And I think that's really important. I love that analogy, and I think it's really essential everybody understands it. But I think this visualization is going to help a lot, because we have capital budgeting, first of all. Now, in the corporate finance world, what does that mean? It means ascertaining funding requirements of the business. So what kind of funding are we going to need for the business? Judging the feasibility and profitability of investment decisions. So this is just basically saying, we're not going to go out and just invest for the sake of investing. We're going to go out and we're going to seek opportunity, and we're going to identify the best opportunity, not just invest for the sake of investing. I think that's really, really important. So why is it that we're just taught in personal finance to just go buy and invest and, put your money, give up control, put your money in accounts that's just buy and hold long-term, give up control of our money and put it in the control of somebody else that knows better than we must know, right? Like that's the idea. So what I would say is, on the personal finance side, on the capital budgeting, is let's save the required capital for emergency fund and investment opportunities, right? That's ascertaining the funding requirements. That's the equivalent right here, is saving the required capital for the emergency funding and investment opportunities. And then be patient and identify the best investment opportunities. So when I say this, and you're probably going to hear a lot of correlations if you watch a lot of my videos of these words and phrases that I use. And I don't know if I've done a poor job in the past or whatever, But it all makes sense to me. And sometimes I feel like the plan doesn't really get landed. The plane doesn't get landed effectively when communicating it to people. Because sometimes my wife always says, like, I'm thinking at 1,000 miles an hour and speaking at 1,000 miles an hour, and people have a hard time keeping up. But that is ultimately what I'm talking about. Is this idea of being patient, which is basically not just investing for the sake of investing, but keeping our money safe, build the capital, and then identify and deploy. That's what we want to do here, right? And that's what the capital budgeting is all about. And that's a phase, that's an important element of corporate finance. But how do we implement it in our personal finances? And that's what the Life 180 pyramid is all about. This is another way of talking about those principles that I talk about in the Life 180 pyramid. And I'm going to put the video, if you haven't seen the Life 180 pyramid video, I'm going to put the video on the end screen for this. So when you get to the end of this video, I would really encourage you to go check that out. Now, the capital structure, right? This is the word structure that I always use, right? So the question is whether to opt for debt, equity, or a mix of both. Now, obviously, this is dealing with a launch of the company. This is dealing with getting that company off the ground, and how are we gonna structure the business as a whole. Now, when we're talking about our personal lives, we have to think about how are we going to structure our personal lives for success. And make no mistake about it, in the corporate finance world, whether you structure for debt, equity, or a mix of both, or something else, like, this is going to have a huge impact on your success and the leverage and time frames and expectations and the risk reward in the business. It just is. There's no way around it. And so when we look at that, sorry, I had to take a drink. When we look at that and we compare it to the personal finance world, in my book, Cashflow Hacking, I talk about a private reserve account, which is basically utilizing a properly designed whole life insurance as a foundational asset in your life, because it opens up the opportunity and provides safe leverage to enhance your investment opportunities. So the reason I love doing this, and listen, you don't need to use a whole life insurance account. You don't need to do this. You could just go save in a savings account. You could go do it in that way, and you won't have the leverage, and you won't have the same amount of control. You won't have the same protections and growth opportunities, but it's still possible, right? Like, I don't want to make it sound like you absolutely have to do this. You could go put money, buy term insurance to insure your human life value. You could put money in muni bonds. You can leverage loans against those. You could do cashback loans through a bank. There are all sorts of things that you can do. You don't need a private reserve account, which is a whole life policy, but I would say that it absolutely will enhance. And I think we have the information that shows that a private reserve account, properly designed whole life insurance policy, is the best place for safe leverage that you're going to find. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about capital structure of launching a business. We're talking about capital structure to build the foundation of your life, so you can actually have that safe leverage to go out and find the best investment opportunities. And then you can actually become a good investor and not a speculator. And that's what the capital structure is all about. Now, the dividend distribution on the corporate finance side is ascertaining whether to distribute dividends or hold profits toward retained earnings. Now, on the personal finance side, this is where I talk about in Cashflow Hacking. The goal is to buy our net worth with the capital structure with a private reserve account. You always take into consideration the human life value, right? And you buy net worth right there. And then what you do is you build cash flow. Okay. So the cash flow in your world, when you do it this way, is the equivalent of dividends, right? Like, that's it. So on the personal finance side, we're thinking the dividends is the equivalent of cash flow. You have to decide how to best use that cash flow. Now, for me, I'm a big believer you want to reinvest that cash flow, kind of like reinvesting the dividends rather than taking them as income, right? We don't want to take them as earnings. We want to reinvest them, and we want to work towards our freedom number, and we want to reach freedom faster. That's ultimately what we want to do. And so this is, I hope you're seeing the correlation between corporate finance and personal finance and how cash flow hacking and utilizing these tools and assets and structure is going to help you get there better. Now, working capital requirements. This is so important. With corporate finance, managing capital requirements for day-to-day operations is what it's about. For personal finance, yeah, you want to manage your personal assets and cash flow, but you got to do so with the goal. With a business, it's really clear what the goal is, right? Like people know what their goals are. They want to be profitable. They have time frames. They have typically boards. They have C-suites of people that are talking about what are our goals and objectives and what are our KPIs, key performance indexes, and what are we doing to be successful. But in personal finances, typically people are like, I don't even know. I don't have any clarity. So the great news is we can reverse engineer this, and we can, if we begin with the end in mind here, and we start with understanding what are our goals, right? Then we can reverse engineer based on what our goals are for the first three here to figure out, okay, like how do I get this all started? And if you run your life this way and you focus on cash flow, you can reach your financial freedom and be completely financially independent in the next 10 years or less. I'm telling you, I know it may sound a bit overwhelming, but I promise you this idea, this concept of what to do with your money, how to structure your financial life is so clean, so easy, so straightforward. Every single person in the world can do it. And I would argue you have a responsibility to do this. This is going to put you at the center of your own success. And if you think about it this way, why go and transfer your money out of your control into the hands of a money manager when you can put yourself in a position where you handle it like a business would? If you look at, this is how corporate finance is taught. Why is it we're teaching businesses corporate finance on how to be successful and how to be in control of their own results? Yet when it comes to personal finances, we're just teaching people that you're too stupid to figure it out. You're not smart enough. You shouldn't even have a vested interest. You should just give your money into the control of somebody else who somehow they're supposed to have a better interest and more care about your financial success in your future, and you're supposed to just give up all responsibility for that. To me, that makes no sense in the world. So what I would say is, think about it in the terms of corporate finance. Think about it in terms of how do you structure your life. When I talk a lot about financial structure, how do you structure your financial life? Begin with the end in mind. Figure out what your time frame is, what you want your lifestyle to look like. Go ahead and figure out the capital budgeting that's going to require to get there. Build in your emergency fund. Build out that opportunity fund. Structure it properly. Where are you going to take that leverage? What other kind of debts are you going to take on? Take on personally, take on with your business, take on for real estate to be able to accomplish that. As you build cash flow, how are you going to manage that cash flow? How are you going to manage that? Reinvest it, take it as distributions and earnings, manage your loans, manage your finances, all this stuff. And then ultimately, when you do that, you're going to be able to get there and work it towards managing and managing life along the way as well. I think is really important to understand. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, any comments, hopefully this added some value to you. I would say reach out, leave a comment in the comment section below. This is something, quite frankly, I had my designer put this together last night because it's like, as I read through this article and I put this together and it made sense to me, I was just like, you know what, I need to like really work through this. So this is a newer kind of thought to me, quite frankly, as I've worked through all this structure in my mind. But I just wanted to share it because I think a picture says 1,000 words. And I think, as I talk about financial structure a ton, I just feel like this is something that I wish more people understood, and hopefully this is a different way to communicate it. And so maybe it clicks with some people that it never clicked with before. So anyway, if you found value in this, please share it out, like it. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you're notified every time I launch a new video. Till next time, have a blessed and inspirational day. We'll talk soon. See ya.